Hey everybody, today's guest is Keith Buckley, lead vocalist for the Buffalo, New York metal band Every Time I Die. Together we take a deep dive into the writing, recording, and inspiration behind the fan-favorite song, Planet Shit, taken from their 2021 album, Radical. I told Keith that this was one of the toughest songs I've ever had to break down here on Chris DeMakes a Podcast. Clocking in at almost 4 minutes, Planet Shit is an unrelenting and uncompromising pummeling. Keith mentioned that he usually writes the lyrics to their songs after the music is completed, sometimes relying on old lyric books or phrases he jotted down in the past that he feels best represents the song at hand. I told him that it's a true work of art to compose lyrics and write vocal parts over something as jarring as this track. Producer and mixer Will Putney absolutely killed it with this song. Some of the most sinister and nasty guitar tones I've ever heard committed to record. And Keith's vocals, well, they absolutely rip your head off. The lyrics to this tune are pissed off, literal, and believable in the sense that you can really tell Keith meant what he's saying here. And I love learning things on this podcast, both music and non-music related, where today, Keith enlightened me that Buffalo used to have a professional basketball team. Who knew? I sure didn't. For all this and a seemingly out-of-place tambourine part, stick around.
Hey, have you heard? Chris DeMakes a Podcast. Hey, have you heard? Chris DeMakes a Podcast. Hey, have you heard? Chris DeMakes a Podcast. Hey, have you heard? Chris DeMakes a Podcast.
Well, hey, Keith, how's it going?
It is going very well. We just had a spooky afternoon at a haunted house with my family, so winding down.
Very nice, very nice. So are you in Buffalo still?
Yeah, in the heart of Buffalo, New York. Yep.
Buffalo, New York. If you haven't been there, some of the most brutal winters I've ever encountered.
Brutal. Also, I realized that a lot of people didn't realize this the other day. We actually used to have a basketball team in Buffalo called the Buffalo Braves. They became the Clippers, and the NBA didn't let Buffalo keep any of the titles they had when they became the Clippers. So I think Buffalo should get a professional basketball team again because the city is missing it.
I think that's a raw deal. I didn't know that.
It really is. No, I kind of thought it was like common knowledge because I'm not a basketball fan because we didn't have it growing up. So, I mean, I watched, I liked Michael Jordan. I was just a fan of Michael Jordan as a kid. So, I wasn't able to go to any games or anything. And I think that my upbringing in Buffalo would have been different. It didn't all come down to the Buffalo Bills all the time.
I didn't think we were going to start this off this way. This is good stuff, though. I like this. We could
just real time
with Keith Buckley. Yeah. Well, hey, I got to ask, I've had every kind of songwriter on here, songwriters that, write the music and the lyrics, write some of the lyrics, write some of the music, contribute just a little bit, but contribute enough to where it sparked the idea for the song. Without them, they wouldn't be there. Mm-hmm. And you and I spoke the other day, and you had mentioned that you write all the lyrics, and you said, yeah, I really can't help with the music. I said, don't worry, I'll do all of that. I got all that taken care of. But I'm intrigued by this song in particular. First of all, this is one of the most brutal songs I've ever heard in my life. Like brutal to where I wanted to go out and smash things after I listened to it. Yeah. Good. Got me fired up. And good. I gotta ask, as a singer, because I know I've done this. Mm-hmm. I've written songs nowhere near as brutal as this. This song's almost 4 minutes long, 3 minutes and 56 seconds. Mm-hmm. Have you ever written a song you don't think about it because you're piecemealing it in the studio and you get to take breaks between vocal takes, but all of a sudden you go to play the thing live and you're like, what did I do? Yes. I created a monster here and I went and watched you guys at Louder Than Life Festival. I watched a bunch of different live videos of this song. Yeah. You kill it. But what's that like going out at a festival? Like you're one of the early bands that day at 1 PM and this song does not let up. No, it's unrelenting.
It doesn't. Yeah. And that was one of the things that I was cursed with through my whole life was getting into the studio and being like, oh, I forgot that I have to do this live. This is where I didn't plan for any breaks. I write it like it's just going to be a machine doing it, but it's not. So, that was, I remember the very first time we ever played it was at Brighton Academy, I think, in the UK. And it got to one of the parts and I was like, oh, I forgot that I'm supposed to breathe like a normal human being. And I was just gassed. So I hope there's no live recordings of that version. But,
Well,
I just learned how to do it.
And you guys are still, very energetic. You're running around too, and some of these venues are tipping 100 degrees. You're playing these outdoor festivals, and I had to ask because you guys are rooted to me in hardcore. There's definitely metal elements. There's definitely what I would call maybe even thrash metal elements here. But hardcore tracks were like 58 seconds, a minute and a half, sometimes 2 minutes long.
Yeah.
Again, this is 4 minutes. It doesn't stop. I mean, there's a couple little guitar things here and there. I think the longest break you get is the 4-bar guitar solo at the very end of the song.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask that. And my next question is, do you typically write lyrics ahead of time? Or do you write it for the track? Like if I was presented 4 minutes of this insanity that is here, I wouldn't know where to begin.
It's intimidating. Yeah. And at a certain point, probably around the year 2000 or so, I just realized that it was just better if I just took notes all the time, because I was writing books. I was trying to write scripts. I was, doing a lot of music projects. And it was just like, there's just so much going on that if I kind of just sit down and try to get into the mood of each one, I don't know if I'm going to be able to. I got a lot on my plate here. So I just started keeping notes all the time. And then when it would come time to sit down with a song, I guess the process was just kind of listening to it a lot and having it like really engraved in my head. And then I just kind of go through my notes and just see if there's any like line that I might have written, any thought that I might have had that, kind of speaks to the vibe of the song. But it usually takes a good chunk of time to figure out what kind of song it was, like what the attitude of it was, because, they all had so much energy in them that I had to kind of figure out what exactly that energy was. But once I did, and I kind of get like a good line maybe from something I had jotted down a few weeks ago, then I just kind of sit with it and just see where it goes. It's a very unconscious sort of process of just kind of going with what feels right.
Well, and you had mentioned that you used to write and take notes. That'd be like in the rehearsal space, I'm sure, because we didn't all have like voice recorders on our phone, and heck, my band didn't even demo in the early days. What was a demo? You just jammed it in the rehearsal space and you went and recorded it. So now you can actually listen to a voice recorder, or I'm sure you guys later on might have had your own home studios and were shooting ideas around, and that certainly makes it easier. But you get to that point where you've sketched out a lyric, you go through maybe your old journals or lyric books, and you're like, okay, this kind of fits the vibe of the song, and you write it. From that point, like overall, I'm speaking with the band, when you present it to the guys, was it usually they let you just have your own vision, or did they interject at that point?
No, it was usually just my own vision, and I wouldn't necessarily have a complete one until I got with the producer. I would kind of leave some room to toy with, with cadences and things with that, things like that were a lot more technical that you don't really think about when you're writing the lyrics, because it's not actually about the feeling. It's more about like the structure of the song. Yeah. So I knew really not to get too married to any sort of specific cadence, especially with songs that are so technical, because you kind of got to float over it, or else it just sounds like, and then
right.
there has to be some soul on top of it. So yeah, it just depended on the producer that we were with, like who I worked really well with. And I feel like, Joe Barisi, when we were doing X Lives, had a lot of really great ideas for vocals. I got the chance to work with Nick Raskalenitz down in Nashville when I was doing stuff with the Damn Things, and he was like an insanely hands-on vocal producer. I'd not dealt with that before, but it was great.
Yeah, Nick is awesome. Mm-hmm. He's of course done Foo Fighters, he's done Rush, a bunch of other stuff. I love everything he's touching.
Me too.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Damn Things, and you got to work with him on the vocals. Well, that's great.
Yeah,
that's great.
It was really cool. It was he just had cool stories about, bands like the Deftones and stuff like that. And yeah, I was just surprised because I didn't expect him to be, but he really, really got in there. And, he kind of just taught me how to let the music do a lot of the work and leave more room for it to create a vibe on its own. So once I learned that with the Damn Things, then I would sort of, kind of went and implemented it with Every Time I Die. So it just has now sort of just kind of become just a process that, I don't really, if it ain't broke,
Yeah. I always trip out. I have friends that are in a band with Scott Ian. That's just amazing.
Yeah. He's awesome.
That's like, if you had told me that in 1987, dude, I would have told you to go jump off a cliff.
Yeah, I know. I still pinch myself. It's just one of those things. It's like, life is wild.
That is so wild. Well, you guys formed in 98. Your first album came out in 2001. And the song we're going to talk about today, Planet Shit, is from the album Radical, released on Epitaph Records last October 22nd of 2021. It was the band's 9th album. And it was produced by Will Putney, who plays in the band Fit for an Autopsy. How'd that come about?
He was just, fan of the band, and had come to us with a very specific vision for a sound. He sort of saw what we had done and accounted for it and saw what worked best. And, just kind of as a fan of the music, sort of what worked best, what he likes of all the stuff that we had done. So he kind of came and really fine-tuned a lot of the pieces that, were connecting most with people.
Right.
Which was really, it's a great perspective to have, because sometimes, you need the fresh ears on it. You need the fresh eyes on it. And, it's cool to work with producers that have done a lot of cool stuff, but it's a totally different experience to work with someone that grew up with your own music and now wants to, kind of be involved to help it evolve.
Yeah. But that's really cool, though, because they're coming from a complete spot of love and admiration. So,
totally.
That they're vested from that standpoint, which is great, because a lot of producers aren't. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. They're just kind of, they're kind of over here on the side. I got to ask before we jump into the track, a song like this, how many songs a day? I know what I'm good for in the studio, depending on the challenge of the track. I'm usually good for about, 2. Maybe I can press it if I break it up. Maybe I can press it to 3, or maybe do 2 lead vocals and maybe get to some backups or something. But where are you at with something like this?
It was like a 2-day affair to do all of it. But then I remember it just getting a pounding headache during one of the parts, and I'll wait until maybe I can pinpoint it.
Yeah.
But a pounding headache, and I was like, I gotta push it. We're almost done. We're almost done. And I mean, I listened to it and I can hear the pain in my voice, because I know that I was just I thought I was gonna throw up. My head was just throbbing, and we get done with it, and I finally, I'm like, I can't, I'm so stoked this song is done. This is the one I was not looking forward to. And he's like, yeah, it's great. And then we'll start the backups tomorrow. We'll double all the stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, I forgot about, there's an entire day's just worth of extras to do. So yeah, it was trouble. It was trouble for me.
Well, I got to tell you, man, I'm an old punker, but I'm an old metalhead too. I listened to all kinds of stuff growing up. And, when I got to be 12, 13 years old, the more abrasive it was to aggravate my teachers and my parents. I loved it. I love heavy music.
Me too.
I can't, I got to be honest in this. I'm not just saying this because you're here. This is one of the most brutal vocal takes I've ever heard in my life. It took my head off, man. And when I do these episodes, I got to listen to the song 30, 40 times. I comb through it bar by bar, line by line. And I'm just, after the last time I listened to it this morning, and I went to soccer with my kids this morning, and I said to myself, I can't listen to this song again. I have to just give it a rest.
Yeah.
Not because I don't like it. It's it's that brutal.
That's the thing. Music like that, it works on your psyche. And it's not, you shouldn't listen to it all the time, because it'll get you angry when you don't know it.
No, this song's great. And lastly, and I promise we're going to jump into the track, I read the comments. I went to YouTube and the comments are insane, and I agree. And again, not just saying this because you're in front of me. This band just never stopped evolving. This stuff is as or more brutal, and the tones on this, Will Putney, he hit it out of the park.
Oh yeah.
The production is just so good. Well, the song starts with an intro. It's a killer riff, hand off left, played 3 times, and on the 3rd time, a chord rings out over an 8 count on the hi-hat. To take us in, to take us into verse 1, and I wrote here, Keith, the guitar tone here is sinister. It is nasty. It's nasty sounding.
Yeah.
No future with a racist past, but we can't acknowledge that. So we burn across and break the flag.
Coming live from planet shit, our only hope was in a murdered kid. The one God we had went off the grid. No future with a racist past. Oh, but we can't acknowledge that. So we burn a cross and pray to a flag.
I felt with this record like I didn't know if I was ever going to get another chance again. I mean, you know, I was, I think 39 writing it. I was old then, you know. It was right before the pandemic in 2017, 2018. Personally, I was at a low point in my life and just getting lower. And I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna have a chance to do this again. And I feel like it would be really irresponsible to just pretend like there's not this entire cultural collapse around the release of any music. I mean, I'm, singing in the rain is fine, but like at some point you gotta be like, okay, well, this is no good, and we can't pretend it doesn't exist. So, I mean, in 2018, that song was written, and nothing had happened. The pandemic hadn't even happened yet. The riots at the Capitol building hadn't even happened yet. So already I felt like we were at like the boiling point. So the fact that it just becoming like more poignant day by day, depending on what news channel you watch, it's really unfortunate. But it was written kind of like from the perspective of a news helicopter, sort of overlooking a riot at the Capitol. It was a idea that I had, and I was going to write about it and describe it, and it ended up happening a few months later, so it's even more apt now. But yeah, it's from a news helicopter, and it's sort of like, kind of reporting on what is being seen. But I guess the person who's kind of reporting is also emotionally charged by what's happening, because you can't be objective anymore. You can't say that you're not a political person. To say you're not a political person these days means you're not a humanist. You don't. Yeah. It means you don't respect other people. It means you don't respect their entire lives, and that's not a political decision. That's a choice that you make on your sense of humanitarianism and your virtues. That's not a political issue. So I feel like I kind of wanted to approach it from a more spiritual standpoint, but using the symbolism of just the literal shit show that it is, really.
Yeah. Well, again, you guys have a large body of work, 9 albums, and some of the comments I read about this song in particular, and it wasn't in a bad light, but they were like, wow, these are some of the most, and I want to see if you agree with this, some of the most literal lyrics that Keith has ever written. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And sometimes you have to go for the jugular and it has to be literal. In this case, literal is not a bad word. It's great. Right. But do you feel that way?
Yeah, absolutely. And what's unfortunate is that a lot of, I was going for literal, but the literal has such enormous metaphoric implications. I mean, yes. One building being seized represents, the destruction of a policy that's failed, of an entire, economic perspective that's failed. Capitalism has failed. Democracy has failed. This is a literal symbol of this enormous thing that we have to address. I've never really shied away from the fact that I love using, literary metaphors in the lyrics as much as I can, but the absurdity of the reality is so much so that I don't even have to be metaphoric anymore. I can be literal, and it's absurd.
Well, and there's some lyrics here that we're going to get to that even if you are blind to everything you're talking about. If you don't want to think this is a political song, whatever, you can still get behind these lyrics because they make you want to fight. You know, like I said, it gets your blood pumping, it gets your blood boiling, which is what great metal music and hardcore music does. Well, there's a lot going on here right off the bat. Like I said, you want to talk about knee jerk. This song is just every twist and turn, and it's just pummeling. The stereo guitars, bass, and drums are in on this verse, and I had here written, are the vocals double track? Because I can hear it. They sound like most of them are double tracked, and obviously there's other parts where there's gang stuff going on. Is that correct?
Yeah. I believe Will kind of just had me double everything all the time. And then it was just sort of like a better to have it and not need it than need it, not have it sort of thing. So he used it sparingly, but yeah, I believe that was it. Yeah.
You know, and for the listeners, you know, when we double vocals, a lot of times we'll get one great lead vocal, and then you double it up pretty good, and that other one will be tucked underneath. It won't be as loud, but it just adds this fullness. And with stuff like this in particular, this kind of music, it just gets it so massively heavy. I'm calling this a double verse because when we get to the line, the one God we had went off the grid, there's 2 bars of my notes are funny on this one. 2 bars of pure guitar riffage before the second half of verse 1, and then when we get to the second half, so we burn a cross and pray to a flag, there's 2 more bars of that guitar riff, and it's completely locked with the bass and the drums. What's happening there, it's so awesome. We get gang vocals on Planet Shit, Murdered Kid, Off the Grid, and the very last line, so we burn a cross and pray to a flag. I love where the gangs are here. They don't make sense either.
No.
Like, they should be on the 2 and 4 because it was like that earlier. It's not like that.
Yeah, those are conscious decisions. It's weird, but it's one of those things where it was just kind of like a signature for us of like, flip it up a little bit, like make it weird if you can.
It's killer. And by the way, correct me at any point here, because I don't know how you would label the parts of this song. So I'm calling the next part a pre-chorus, but I don't know. I could be completely wrong in this thing. And by the way, I've done, 130 of these now, Keith. I've never had a time going, verse, chorus, bridge, out. Ever. This is the first song where I went, what is going on here? I even went online to try to look, and no one knew.
This is whatever you want to call it, I'll call it too, as long as we're referring to the same thing. Yeah.
we are, and I love that I don't know what's going on here. This is one of the biggest challenges to break down this song. Well, the pre-chorus. Hey, we'll wave it high. Hey, we'll wave it high. Hey, we'll wave it high. Those pigs are fat with pride. And there's gangs on all the hays there.
Yeah. So that is kind of like where I was talking about. It's like, if you can imagine from a news camera, it's kind of like, imagine the crowd of ignorant, stupid, mean people, chanting, being proud that they completely lack any sort of empathy, and they're chanting and, supporting each other. And then the other line is kind of from the news woman's perspective of like, they love their pride. So it's kind of like an eye rolling moment of like, they really are proud of themselves. Like they're destroying, everything, and they're still proud of it.
Right on. Well, this part, there's double time on the kick and the snare drum here, and it's just so intense. And right when you get done saying pride, there's a 1-bar re-intro of that intro riff panned off left.
Yes.
Panned off to the left speaker to set up verse 2.
The karma wheel is flat. Even the Ten Commandments cracked. There's no love when the outlaw wears a badge.
The karma wheel is flat. Even the 10 Commandments cracked. There's no law when the outlaw wears a badge.
That, it's pretty much what happens when there's no agreed upon authority figure. And, all of these things that we're trying to rely on in our own half-assed way with whatever sort of belief system we might have set up, it's not going to work for us. It's not going to work for us when we need to really make a choice and fight, because I think that what I was really trying to express with this song above anything else, above any of my displeasure or disgust at the way that this country is run, is that it will come down to good versus evil. Like, that's just all there is to it. I mean, you can't both sides this anymore. This is, you either are a person who acts out of love and good faith, or you're a person who is angry and spiteful and lies all the time and does not want to see other people happy. So it's really going to come down to that. I mean, are you willing to fight for other people who just want to live, or are you going to fight for other people who want to fight against other people?
Hey everybody, we got lots more with Keith Buckley after a few words from our sponsors.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah.
You know what I'm really excited about?
What's that?
This month's sponsor, Rockabilia. It is awesome. I was on their site again last night. It's to the point now where I need to stop spending money, even with the discount code DeMakes. I've already spent over $180 just in the last 2 days.
Well, at least you got the 15% off for using for using the discount code. Chris, I was on there. I was looking for gifts. I didn't get this for you, but I was looking at the Wham t-shirts on there. They have a Wham Last Christmas t-shirt, and they have an amazing one that has Andrew and George on it. That's a jitterbug. They're like doing the jitterbug on the shirt. And I was like, damn, Chris would love this, but I ended up not getting it for you because I was like, I don't know if he'll wear it. Would you wear a Wham t-shirt?
I would wear a Wham t-shirt, and I'll tell you, I live out in the sticks, Chris. It's a half hour to civilization. So for me to go and look at rock shirts, it's a little bit of a commitment, the drive there and back. So this has been kind of perfect. Not perfect in the sense I've spent so much money, but it's been perfect. I go on their site, super easy to navigate. And hey, with a discount code, DeMakes, you get 15% off. You can't go wrong.
For sure. They have over 500,000 items. Everything is officially licensed by the artist, and it features bands across a wide range of genres. They have more band merch than any other company or website. And we're not just talking about t-shirts and hoodies. Dude, they have everything. Toys, ashtrays, belt buckles, coffee mugs. I mean, seriously, everything you could imagine from every artist you can imagine. Rockabilia.com. Use the discount code DeMakes to save 15%. It's the perfect place to go to get a gift for yourself or for a loved one. Do you like to laugh, geek out on music, and learn all about that band or artist who had that one song back in the day, but then seemed to fall off the face of the earth? If so, you need to subscribe to One Hit Thunder. Together with an array of interesting and hilarious guests, we do a weekly dive into one-hit wonders like Eiffel 65's Blue, Krayshawn's Gucci Gucci, EMF's Unbelievable, Delamitri's Roll to Me, Los Del Rio's Macarena, Musical Youth's Pass the Dutchie, and even Patrick Swayze's She's Like the Wind. So are you subscribed to One Hit Thunder or what? As Desiree would say, you gotta be. And as K7 would encourage, you gotta come, baby, come and join in on the fun of the One Hit Thunder podcast.
Come, baby, come, baby, baby, come, come. Come, baby, come, baby, baby, come. I assure you that hell is not.
And now, back to the show.
What's interesting here about this verse and the pre-chorus number 2 that we're going to talk about here in a second, this whole time there's no more of those gang vocals. It's just all you hear, which I think is really cool. When we get to the line in the verse, last line, there's no law when the outlaw wears a badge. There's one bar of that guitar riff again, and then we go to what I'm calling pre-chorus 2.
So throw a brick, throw a brick, throw a brick. That's all becomes an instrument.
So throw a brick. Throw a brick, throw a brick, the tool becomes an instrument. And on the first 2 lines here, there's a call and response, a backing vocal panned off left of throw a brick, only on those 2 lines. Why not the 3rd line?
That's a great question. I don't know.
I don't think it needs to be there. It's so interesting, Keith. When I do this, I don't just think of the music between my ears anymore. I'm looking at it on paper.
I can see it. Yeah, I love it.
And when you see it on paper, you're going, wait a second, shouldn't there be something there? It looks weird.
I think really, to me, what it feels, I don't know if this was the intention or if this was just the wonderful result, but to me in my head, I see it as a gang vocal, and then someone steps forward to singularly lead it to the next step. Yeah. So I don't know. It works. Because I picture, like, you know, visually. So that's sort of what that has come to mean to me.
Well, then we get to what I'm calling the chorus. And the band goes to halftime here. It is so heavy. And there's some really cool guitar string bends in this part that just sound just nasty. The tones on this, again, you guys did a great job. Will Putney, he just killed it on this.
Whose fucking side are you on? Whose fucking side are you on? When all the lights that were drawn are washed away in the flood. Whose fucking side are you on?
This is that lyric in particular I was talking about. No matter where you think this song is coming from, who can't get behind what it says here? Whose fucking side are you on? Whose fucking side are you on? When all the lines that were drawn are washed away in the blood, whose fucking side are you on? That lyric just itself, whose fucking side are you on? It just says so much.
And I felt like it just needed to be said that simply. I mean, because like I said, it's going to be a clear decision that you either want what is good or you want what is bad. And the thing about this is that it needed to be stated very clearly, because the decision is going to be very clear one day, I believe, just the way that this whole world is going. But it is a conditional, and lest anybody think that I'm like condoning violence or anything, I'm not saying that anyone choosing the side is drawing the blood. What I'm saying is nobody who we're relying on is going to care what side any of us are on. So we might as well get on the same side fast, because when everything's, you know, covered in blood, it's going to be hard to see where borders are.
Gotcha. Well, I'm calling this next part the post-chorus number 1. And just when you think this song can't get any more brutal, it goes to this part. And I'm just like, what is going on?
What kind of heaven awaits someone so cruel and afraid? But they gate in hell. You could be living well in your private hell.
What kind of heaven awaits someone so cruel and afraid? But they gated hell. You could be living well in your private hell.
That one is for anyone in the listening audience who, you know, might believe in heaven and hell. If you want to put it in those terms, here's those terms. You know, there's political terms, there's spiritual terms, there's humanistic terms. Here's some religious terms. You know, if these people are claiming that they are, you know, representing God and fighting for virtue, then what sort of heaven is that, where these people who are such hypocrites are going there? You know, it comes down to if you believe that these people are truly virtuous, then it makes you question the structure that they're representing, the institution that they're representing.
And who mixed the record? Did Will mix it?
Yeah, I believe so. Will, one of his guys. Yeah, I should know that. That's something a singer doesn't know. I mean,
well, there's some cool stuff going on here. That's why I had asked who mixed it. So on this first line, what kind of heaven awaits someone so cruel and afraid? There's a great drum buildup this whole time with the band. And on the word awaits and on the word afraid, the bass goes up an octave and does this like string bend. It's just such a cool thing that happens there, like this octave thing.
Yeah.
Someone so cruel and afraid.
And then, but they gated hell. Your vocals panned off right, and you could be living well is panned off left, and it comes back center for in your private hell, and I love that. I love that. After, but they gated hell, there's a dun 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 that happens, and that same thing happens after you could be living well and in your private hell. And what's happening at those moments on those dun-dun-duns with the drums and the guitars and the bass, it's so cool in between that vocal. It's great.
They gated hell. You could be living well in in private hell.
It creates a space, I think, especially with the panning of the vocals. You know, it makes you feel like you're just in a big empty room and that everything's far away from you, but that big empty space is full of this just insane stuff that you don't know where it's coming from.
Right, but I don't know if it's so hard for me to wrap my head around what I'm about to say, and for the listeners, I don't really think they know what goes into this. Is an art form what you did with this song. For instance, the dun dun duns in this part. Like, you could have sung over that and left the spaces in the parts you did sing.
Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm. No.
Well, yeah, that could have been what you did, but you went the opposite way.
Yeah, those are conscious decisions. And I mean, and it's just something that, you know, you can attest to it just from the experience of recording. It's the experience of writing and just being like, I know for some reason this sounds more intense than this. So I'm going to go with A, you know? And it just becomes like where you really kind of set up these different scenarios. Like, how does the song feel if this part's here? All right, replace that part with this part. Now how does the song feel? And you really put it together like a puzzle. Yeah,
it's interesting if this music, though, would have went to 10 different vocalists or 5 different, or lyricists, it all would have come back with something different. And I can't imagine this song being any different. It's perfect as it is.
Thanks, man.
We get into what I'm calling pre-chorus 3.
So give 'em rope. Let's give 'em rope. Yeah, give 'em rope. On the guillotine. Better yet, the guillotine. Oh yeah, the guillotine. Honesty's not
This part of the song happens more than any other part of the song. It could almost be argued this is kind of a chorus, but it doesn't feel like a chorus. But man, this part, and it's now a double pre-chorus on this part. We get it twice. So give 'em rope. Let's give 'em rope. Yeah, give 'em rope. Or the guillotine. Better yet, the guillotine. Oh yeah, the guillotine. We get that call and response again on the first 2 lines of give 'em rope. They're both panned off left again. On the third, yeah, give 'em rope, there's this crazy riffage with this amazing drum fill that happens there before the second half. And we get a gang vocal on oh yeah, the guillotine, the last line.
Yeah.
It's just so heavy there.
And it's it kind of makes it feel like, well, you know, to me, it makes it feel like, you know, there's a crowd gathering and each person is yelling something, well, the same thing, but they have a different voice, you know? And so you're hearing these different voices in a crowd sort of, but the music behind it is the voice.
Yeah, no, it's great. And here I am at this next part going, what the heck is this? And I sat here last night in headphones. It's like 11 o'clock at night. And I'm just sitting here, just staring at the lyrics, staring at this part going, what is this? Mm-hmm. And I came up with my own thing.
Okay.
Because the next part's definitely a bridge after this.
Yes.
But I'm calling this the bridge setup.
Okay. All right. So it's like the bridge. It's a blueprint. It's a blueprint.
Yeah, well,
of the
because
bridge.
you don't get, this song does not let up. You don't get a musical part where you're like, okay, this is a musical interlude.
Right.
We're gonna let the vocalist, maybe get some oxygen, take a sip of his
Take a
drink,
bathroom break. Yeah.
yeah. Go have a smoke, but not in this case. This just keeps going.
Honesty's not a virtue when you're a lying piece of shit. You're a soulless hypocrite. What kind of heaven awaits someone so cruel and vain? Love is not a virtue when you're a heartless piece of shit. You're a soulless hypocrite. Monster.
This is the bridge setup, I'm calling it. Honesty's not a virtue when you're a lying piece of shit. You're a soulless hypocrite. What kind of heaven awaits someone so cruel and afraid? We get that lyric again. Love is not a virtue when you're a heartless piece of shit. You're a soulless hypocrite. And man, who can't get behind this? Honesty's not a virtue when you're a lying piece of shit. Who doesn't feel that or ever want to say that in their life?
Yeah. I mean, and how do you fight for the virtue of honesty when you're fighting against someone who doesn't respect it, you know, who has no honesty, who's not, you're not talking the same language, you know?
And I love that the only time you get a gang here is on that middle line of the 5 lines, the third line. What kind of heaven awaits someone so cruel and afraid? The other lines, especially that first one, honesty's not a virtue when you're a lying piece of shit. It sounds more personal when it's just you singing that.
Yeah.
And I talk about that a lot on this show when there's no harmonies on certain things or no backing vocals on things. It's just one voice.
Right.
And it has to be sometimes.
Yep. Totally agree with you. Yeah. That was meant to feel very intimate, we'll call it. But yeah.
Right. And this whole part, the drumming is just insane. Insane. Like some of the best, coolest rock drumming, metal drumming I've ever heard.
Absolutely.
The guitar, bass, and drums are playing crazy counters off one another, and the guitars and bass are playing these really killer, like descending runs. This song makes my eyeballs feel like I'm at a ping pong match. It's like, what is going on? And then we get into what I'm calling the bridge. And again, the band goes halftime here, and the guitar and the bass progression is just pummeling here.
Monsters, we stand no chance without your hands. You fucking monsters, we stand no chance without your hands. I want hands. What kind of death?
Monsters, we stand no chance without your heads. You fucking monsters, we stand no chance without your heads. I want heads.
Yep. It's just a mythological David and Goliath reference where it's really the giant is too overwhelming. You kind of got to just go for the one thing that will end it all. So you got to find that source, that the head of the beast. But yeah, it feels too overwhelming at times.
Well, you get those gangs on Monsters. You get it on No Chance, on the third line on Monsters, on the fourth line on No Chance, and then you get the gang on the very last one, I Want Heads, and it takes your head off. It's so heavy. Coming right after this part, I'm calling it post-chorus 2. We already had a post-chorus 1.
What kind of death can you buy that's any different than mine?
What kind of death can you buy that's any different than mine? And again, on this whole line, we get that drum buildup again with the band. And on the word buy and on the word mine, that bass octave thing happens again. I talked about a little bit ago. Kind of goes up and does that bend. And it's like, whoa, like where did that come from? It's a really cool part.
Yeah, it's like I said, I can't speak for a lot of the decisions made musically, but I can speak for where I put the lyrics and the vocals on top of the music. And I feel like this kind of marks maybe the halfway point of the second round of this song. Cause like when I'm writing it, I have to like really break it into patterns and then smaller patterns and then smaller patterns and smaller patterns. So I feel like we've passed the halfway point and it's almost like it's going to go back to the beginning, but then all the stuff is tweaked again and you kind of like lose your place.
Right.
So it's kind of overwhelming and you feel like where it's about to go, but then it changes up on you real fast.
Yeah, no, I talked to my producer this morning, Chris. I said, dude, this has been one of the most challenging songs to try to figure out what the parts are. Yeah. Like in terms of like what is this the chorus, what the arrangement is, right. What is this next part? And there's just so much going on. It's very challenging. Well, after this line, there is 2 bars of a buildup, and then the guitar panned off left for 1 bar, and we get into what I'm calling pre-chorus 4. Okay, this is that part that keeps happening. This is another double pre-chorus here.
So give him rope. Let's give him rope. Yeah, give him rope. Oh, the guillotine. Let me at the guillotine. Oh yeah, the guillotine.
So give him rope. Let's give him rope. Yeah, give him rope, or the guillotine. Better yet, the guillotine. Oh yeah, the guillotine. We get gang vocals on Yeah, Give him rope. We get gang vocals on the last line, oh yeah, the guillotine. And there's some killer dissonant feedback panned off right after the third Yeah, Give him rope. And then something absolutely strange happens for the next 3 lines. The back half of this double pre-chorus number 4. A tambourine comes in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like just for those 3 lines. Like why there?
I have no idea.
It's so cool.
I'm sure someone could find out.
I'm listening to this, Keith, and like by the 10th time, I'm going, why does this part sound different? And it was because nothing else had changed. Right. It wasn't like another guitar came in or something. Like, what? Why is this? I'm like, There's a tambourine.
What
there.
an ear! What an ear!
Yeah.
No one's picked that out.
There's a tambo there, and it's
wow.
It's cool. It's cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
You wouldn't think this track would call for a tambourine, but it's cool.
Hey, you know what? The thing is, it fits because it's like it's got this, revolutionary spirit to it, and it kind of reminds like in the 60s and 70s when people were there were protests on campuses and the students were all peace and love. I mean, that was the age of the tambourine, man. That was the birth of it. So,
and tambourine rhymes with guillotine. Maybe that's where you guys were going for there. I don't know.
I should have used that in the lyrics.
Oh yeah, the tambourine.
Yeah, give them all a tambourine.
Well, now we're getting into what I'm calling Bridge 2. Who can't get behind this? Who hasn't felt this type of angst at some point in their life? The lyric is, fuck you, die. Fuck you, die. Fuck you, die. Die. You're already dead inside. You're already dead inside.
Yeah, I feel like it's another one of those things that just really needed to be said as plainly as possible. And I think that people get a little nervous about saying something like about expressing that level of anger. Like, I really want you to die. People are like, oh, I don't want to go there because that's like a curse. But it's the thing is, why wouldn't you go there if you already have, you're already in the weeds as far as any sort of redeemable value. Like, what now all of a sudden you don't want to touch on this, like, no, let's call it what it is. And this really is very, like I said, plain stated. And I don't think people should feel bad about being angry for a righteous cause, and this is, we're dealing now with, like I said, humanitarian issues. These are righteous causes that need anger. So just needs to be harnessed.
Well, it's definitely angry. This part goes to halftime with some amazing, in my notes I have written, amazing musical acrobatics, because that's what's going on here. It's hard to even describe in words what is happening. This whole part is just, it's schizophrenic, but it's all held together. That guitar riff panned off left is happening as the stereo guitars are doing these like these stops, and it's just so heavy. On the word die, you hold out the die over more amazing riffage for 6 bars. Before we get to the 2 lines, you're already dead inside. The snare goes to double time there, and this part just kicks your rear end. It's so heavy. And right at the last one, you're already dead inside, there's a super long snare fill to take us into verse 3.
We're all trapped on planet shit. Our only hope is in a murder kid. The one God we had went off the grid.
We're all trapped on planet shit. Our only hope was in a murdered kid. The one God we had went off the grid.
Yeah, so I wanted to do a variation on the first verse, obviously. I've always done that. I don't like the idea of like repeating a verse just because it's the same instrumentation. It feels like, I could tell some more of a story here. Like, why would I want to repeat it? So yeah, at this point, same sentiment, but now is not so much of the exclusion of looking at it from the outside. Now, the accountability comes in, and the acknowledgement that, like, look, we're all a part of this, and something has got to change.
And I like that. I like how there's some of the themes from verse 1, but you altered it enough. Sometimes when you just copy and paste a lyric, it's lazy. It's lazy
totally.
To me.
Totally.
You get the gang vocals on Planet Shit, on Murdered Kid, and on Off the Grid, and then that 2-bar guitar riff again, just like every third line of the other verses happens here.
Yeah.
Before we get into pre-chorus 5.
It's suicide! It's suicide! It's suicide! It's our only chance at life!
Hey, you're suicide. Hey, you're suicide. Hey, you're suicide is our only chance at life.
Yeah, again, I'm swinging for the fences. It was just one of those things where I promised myself that I was not going to automatically limit how angry I was. And that doesn't mean that my anger was going to go unchecked. It just means that I was not going to automatically say, no, I can't do that. So if I had an idea, I really needed to convince myself that it shouldn't be said. It's irresponsible to be said. It doesn't hold the theme. It's too shocking. Like, I'm not saying this is, but these are things I have to consider. Like, sure, is this going to be, how are people going to respond to this? But that idea of suicide obviously is no joke, but the idea of the accountability and ridding yourself of yourself falls in line with the spiritual terms. It's just a self-sacrifice that none of this is going to work unless everyone is willing to do something for someone other than themselves and other than that self.
Well, I didn't write it anywhere in the notes. It was somewhere around here, though, that your voice, it kind of cracks a little bit somewhere in there. And I can tell that you're maxed out, Yeah. But I'm glad you kept that because you can feel it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was and just one of those things where there's real emotion in some of these takes, and that's obviously one of the things that I kind of value most during these processes is to make sure that in all the doubling and in all the layering that the soul of the vocal is still there, so there's some times, and on other records I could point you to exact moments where my voice has done something I didn't plan for, but it just, it's the energy of the song and it feels right, and you keep it because the imperfect take is sometimes the perfect take.
That's why I don't edit my vocals. I can't do it. I let my bass player do it because I'll pick out. I hate every little nuance.
Yep, absolutely. Yep, totally.
Well, we get now to chorus 2, and the band goes halftime again.
Whose fucking side are you on? Whose fucking side are you on? When all the lies that were done are washed away in the blood.
Whose fucking side are you on? Whose fucking side are you on? When all the lines that were drawn are washed away in blood. And you get the gang on the first line, whose fucking side are you on? And you get it on the last, are washed away in blood. The band goes to halftime, like I said, brutally heavy. And right after this, it's that one little break that I'm sure you're back chugging some water real fast during this part live, where you actually get 4 bars. Yeah. It's not a long time.
I get to
4
breathe.
Bars of a wah pedal guitar solo that comes in.
It's cool as hell.
It is cool. It's so cool. And then we get into, basically, it's post-chorus 3, but I'm going to call it the outro here.
The blade that cuts through their spine has good people on both sides.
The blade that cuts through their spine has good people on both sides. And the band abruptly ends, as you say, sides. It's just... It couldn't have ended more perfect. There's no guitars ringing out. It's just like the Mack truck hit a brick wall.
Yeah, that was one of those moments where it was like I came up with a line and it fit perfectly at the time, with the song and everything. Just I was like, I'm not even gonna think about. That's it. That's done. We're done. That's how it ends. Yeah. So.
No, it's perfect. On the line, the blade that cuts through their spine, that bass octave thing happens on spine. Just the one time here. There's that drum buildup with the whole band on the whole line. And there's like a super loud wah pedal string bends that are still happening here, kind of carried over from that solo. And the band abruptly ends. The song is done. And I was sitting there the first time I listened to this and went, what just happened? You typically don't get a song. Again, 4 minutes is long. This is a longer song to be pummeled that hard, and it's great.
Good. Yeah, good. I feel like, like I said, personally, just speaking on the lyrics, that I accomplished everything I set out to with this song, and I I think it's really good because it still has the spirit in it that it always had. And, whether it gets played live or not, that the song I think it just is a sign of the times. The song is really appropriate now, so I feel like a lot of people are going to connect that specific song to a very specific time in their lives.
Well, I can say this because I have some years on you, but bands that have been around as long as you guys have don't have the ferocity that you guys do on album number 9. I got to hand it to you.
Thanks,
Hats
man.
off.
Thanks,
it's
man.
So it's so good. And before we break, anything you'd like to leave the listeners with? What you got coming up? What's happening?
Oh man, nothing yet. Just taking some time, relaxing, enjoying sobriety and fatherhood, and doing all the fun family stuff I never got to do when I was on tour all the time. So
good for you.
I'm streaming sometimes at official Keith Buckley. It's twitch.tv/official Keith Buckley. So I'm there once in a while, just kind of watching movies or whatever.
Right on, man. Well, Keith, thanks so much for sitting with us today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, dude, my pleasure. This was great. Thanks for having me.
I broke my own heart. I'm trying to forgive myself, but if it gets too close, I gotta kill it all. I'm gonna need your help. My annihilation, my annihilation, my annihilation, my annihilation. Kick off postmortem.
I love that episode, and I love this band. And Chris and I are going to be talking about Keith, Every Time I Die, and lots of other stuff in the rap segment that's coming right up after a few words from our sponsors.
Hey, this is Scott from Fly on the Call. Each week I speak to a different musician, whether they're in an established band like Silverstein or the Wonder Years, or a band on the rise like Spanish Love Songs, Origami Angel, or Meet Me at the Altar. We discuss music and lyrics, the successes and challenges of being in a band, and more, as we get to the core of each artist. The show features musicians of diverse genres and backgrounds, so there's always a chance I'll be talking to your new favorite band. Listen and subscribe at soundtalentmedia.com.
Do you like to laugh, geek out on music, and learn all about that band or artist who had that one song back in the day, but then seemed to fall off the face of the earth? If so, you need to subscribe to One Hit Thunder. Together with an array of interesting and hilarious guests, we do a weekly dive into one-hit wonders like Eiffel 65's Blue, Krayshawn's Gucci Gucci, EMF's Unbelievable, Delamitri's Roll to Me, Los Del Rio's Macarena, Musical Youth's Pass the Dutchie, and even Patrick Swayze's She's Like the Wind. So are you subscribed to One Hit Thunder or what? As Desiree would say, you gotta be. And as K7 would encourage, you gotta come, baby, come and join in on the fun of the One Hit Thunder podcast.
Come, baby, come, baby, baby, come, come. Come, baby, come, baby, baby, come.
As we near the end of the show, here's a band you might not know.
Welcome to this week's Band You Might Not Know. If you'd like your band to be considered for Chris DeMakes a podcast, all you have to do is email your best song via MP3 only and a short bio to bandyoumightnotknow@gmail.com. This week's featured artist is American Television, a punk rock band from I don't know where, because they didn't tell me. However, they have a song on the Fest 20 vinyl compilation and recently played Fest in Gainesville, Florida. Here's a snippet of their song, Moments.
I'm a parking lots and the whiskey shots. I'll just drop the shit and the ground. For all I know, y'all are doing the same thing back home. We're gonna see each other on the other side of it all.
The Rap with Chris and Chris.
Chris, I got to tell you a quick little story. Back in the day when Punchline was recording, we used to record with this guy, Mike Ofka. He's like a shredder of a guitar player, but he's a very mellow, subdued fella. And me and my band, we never forget this moment. We were playing a part in a song that was pretty heavy. We were all like psyched about it, all fired up. And I remember Mike Ofka, like, we finished the take and Mike Ofka said in his very like subdued monotone voice, the song makes me want to break something. we always laugh about that and quote that to this day. And that is how this song makes me feel. I absolutely love this song. You know as well as I do, I'm not a big heavy music guy. I love the Deftones, I love Glassjaw, and I love Every Time I Die. I think this is one of the best heavy songs I've ever heard in my life, and I'm not exaggerating.
No, I I said it. What band has this kind of ferocity? 20 plus years into their career on their 9th album, and reading the comments, the fans, they're this band just doesn't skip a beat. They just keep evolving. They keep getting heavier, and this song just took my head off the first time I listened to it, and on subsequent listens. And at some point, as I told Keith, I had to stop listening to it.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think you want to listen to it too many times in a row. You might lose a little bit of the effect. I mean, this song gets me fired up. If I'm working out or something, this song comes on, I'm like, I'm putting the treadmill up to 10 miles an hour. I'm fired up when this song comes on. I think this was the first song ever where you're like, I mean, you did a good job of naming the parts, but this is kind of the first song where it's like, this isn't really a pre-chorus, is it? This isn't really a chorus. It was kind of like you just called them something.
No, because nothing really made sense here. I mean, there was some parts that repeated, but they would only repeat half of it or a third of it, and there's odd time signatures happening, and just all this. There's so much here, and it's unrelenting. Keith never stops screaming.
Yeah. I can imagine that it would be so much fun to do this song live, but at the same time, real work to do it live as well. Maybe you have to rely on the crowd at a few parts. I don't know how he pulls it off. It's impressive.
Oh yeah, I watched a couple live clips, and it's brutal. And even he said this song was a 2-dayer. He had to take his time in doing this because there's just so much here. And he also said something that was really, really poignant. He was just like, I want to feel it. And you have to feel it in order to, I always talk about, in order to sell it. The listener's going to feel it. I can hear vocal takes where my head wasn't in it, and it just doesn't give me those goosebumps. And there's other ones where I go, I hit the mark there because I know what I was feeling at that time. It comes across, Chris.
You can't fake this song. This style,
No.
This song, you can't fake it. That's my complaint with some of the radio rock bands that are real, everything is over processed and everything sounds perfect. First of all, this song couldn't be that way. Just the structured arrangement of this song, it couldn't be that way. But his vocal, his delivery, and the emotion behind that delivery is really the icing on the cake in this song. I love that you got into, kind of started the whole conversation out with asking him how he goes about writing in his position. If his band is doing the music and he's doing, the top line melody, and, there is a certain amount of melody in this. I know it's a screamed song, but I think that's why I like Every Time I Die and those other, I mentioned Deftones and Glassjaw. I like those bands because it's still an element of that. And sometimes my complaint with hardcore music is there's not enough melody there for me. But I thought it was interesting how you got into how he goes about doing that, and especially with the lyrics too, and what he said, which I think is important, especially if you're just the singer of a band, but really for anybody, is just always be writing,
Yeah.
Whether it's in your phone or on a notepad or whatever, always be writing. So you don't have to on the spot necessarily come up with it. You can reference something that you've thought or felt before.
Yeah, he said he referenced his notepads and went, yeah, this kind of fits the vibe of this song. And this track, okay, if my grandfather was still alive, he would hear this and go, oh, this is no talent, it's a bunch of screaming. For the listeners, you don't realize, even if you don't like this kind of music, the breadth of talent that goes into this. Okay, first of all, the musicians playing the tracks on this, they're killing it. The parts are so innovative. And again, if you were to give just this instrumental track to 5 different vocalists, they would all come up with something different. Okay, the fact that Keith came up with this, and I mentioned in the episode, he could have sang on these lines instead of here. And it's no, he has it in his head how it's supposed to go, and it's truly an art form. It's great.
And I really liked hearing him talk about the lyrics of the song. I felt like I'm very like-minded to him. I've always got that sense from their music. Since I was a kid, I loved Rage Against the Machine, and all through, I always respect the bands that will comment on what's going on in the world, Keith said he thought it would be irresponsible to pretend we're not in the midst of this cultural collapse. He referenced a riot at the Capitol before it happened. He predicted that in song. I thought that was incredible.
Yeah, it is. And what else is incredible is, that's the beauty of music. We talked about this how many times, Chris, that everyone can interpret a lyric differently. And even if you were just completely naive of what this song was about as a young, angsty person who can't get behind a lot of these lyrics, it's like, almost anthemic at points. And this was the perfect lyric for this song. He couldn't have picked anything else that would have been better than this, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it was cool how eloquently he spoke about those lines where he said, yeah, I pushed it as far. I mean, you're talking about lines like, fuck you, die, and really taking it as far as it can go, like the guttural, raw emotion that you feel like, yeah, you don't want someone to actually die, but sometimes you feel like you want to scream that, right? And I feel like, I don't think he did that irresponsibly. He speaks about what he was feeling, and I love it, man. I think it's amazing. I love that he said that you shouldn't feel bad for being angry for righteous causes. Once again, like you said, Chris, you could listen to this song you could listen to this song in a void where everything going on in the world isn't happening and still feel that emotion. When you're angry, like, this is a go-to song for me when I'm feeling like that feeling.
You could play this for someone on the other side of the world that doesn't speak English, and they would feel that that anger and that passion. And hey, one more shout out for producer Will Putney and who mixed this. I mean, they couldn't have picked anybody better, in my opinion. The track is just brutal. I said at the top, the guitars sound sinister. They sound nasty. The whole production's great.
Sounds incredible in my car. The car test. I've had this all the way up, probably risking blowing my speakers. Maybe mad, maybe just feeling it. It comes on shuffle and I'm like, damn, I'm feeling this. So yeah, it sounds amazing. Chris, you were the first person to ever point out the tambourine in the song. You got to feel special, right?
It's only for those 3 lines. I'm like, why is there a tambourine here? Like, it on paper, it makes 0 sense, but it works perfectly. It's great.
It's chaotic, and it's everything that I personally think is good about heavy music. I think it's awesome, man.
Absolutely. And Chris, what else sounds great coming through a car stereo?
I would say that would probably be our After Party podcast.
How the heck did you know that? My gosh.
Yeah, if you go to ChrisDeMakes.com, you could sign up for our supporting cast. Supporting cast is basically like a Patreon. Most people know what a Patreon is. It's like the same sort of thing. But you get a bonus episode of our podcast called The After Party every week. Sometimes we go back in history to talk about music. Sometimes we talk about our personal experiences with music. Basically, it's a lot of fun, and you gain a lot of knowledge from it. And most importantly, aside from the huge back catalog of episodes and the weekly episode of The After Party, you're supporting the podcast that you love, a.k.a. our podcast, Chris DeMakes a podcast. And we really appreciate the support. A lot of people tell us how much they love The After Party, and that means a lot to us because we put a lot of love into it.
Absolutely. So once again, that's ChrisDeMakes.com if you haven't signed up. And hey, it's you, the listeners, who have gotten us to where we're at. I hear all the time, you're always writing us, hey, I've told my friend about this, I told my buddy. If you know someone that loves music, please turn them onto this podcast. We love your help and support. And if you haven't already, please join the Chris DeMakes a podcast Facebook group. It's a lot of fun in there. Give me a follow on Instagram as well at LessThanChrisD. And I want to thank this week's guest, Keith Buckley, for sitting in with us. And we'll see you next week.
Do you enjoy the content and production of Chris DeMakes a podcast? Do you have an idea for a podcast or an existing podcast that you'd like to take to the next level? Well, check out WeKnowPodcasting.com. At WeKnowPodcasting.com, we have over 25 years of combined experience in the pod field, and we're ready to help you succeed in the golden era of podcasting.
Hey, this is Chris Swinney, formerly of the Ataris and currently host of That One Time on Tour, part of the Sound Talent Media Podcast Network. Have you ever wondered what it's really like on the road? The highs can be euphoric, but the lows can be crushing. Join me every week as I chat with industry pros about what it's like living out their wildest dream and, in some cases, their worst nightmare. Past guests of the show include members of NoFX, Pennywise, Bad Religion, and more. Listen and subscribe at soundtalentmedia.com.
What's up, everyone? It's Joe, and I'm the host of That's Awesome with Joe, a podcast on the newly formed Sound Talent Media Podcast Network. I talk with tons of your favorite artists, managers, touring personnel, and more. Most of the time we talk about music, but lots of the time we end up talking about something completely unrelated. We laugh a lot. We do a lot of really stupid things, but also some things that are really informative and interesting. Basically, it's a podcast that I think you should listen to. Obviously, I'm biased because it's my podcast, but I think I might be into it if I wasn't the host. Check it out at soundtalentmedia.com.